All right, guys. Let's start on our back. We'll start in a little twist. So you're going to lie down on your back, bend your legs. Take your right shin over and across your left thigh. Some of you might grab a hold of your ankle with your left hand, and then you're going to scoot your butt just a little bit to the right and drop your legs over to the left. Everybody's here, so if you feel like you're too close to somebody, you can always move your mat. I don't even care if you dramatically move your mat, like if you were to sit up and be like, I'm too squished, I need to look somewhere else and move your mat, just do it. I don't want you to feel stuck on your mat or like you can't get comfortable. That's kind of the worst. So you could take your right arm up to the side if you have the room. The right arm could be long, or you just cactus it, which means just bend your right arm. And you're looking to the right. So you look away from the side that your legs are dropping, but only if that feels okay on your neck, right? A lot of you might look up at the ceiling instead. And then go ahead and soften your face. And be really conscious of how your face didn't soften your mind. So understand what is operating the physical, because it helps you to remain aware of the fact of what makes the body unwell and what can make the body well. We can get into our heads thinking that we're stuck and confined and a slave to the body when certain things are happening. And that's just not simply the case, right? Your physical body doesn't decide you, although it can feel that way and can definitely take you down that trajectory when you keep compounding the fact that your body's the problem, not your mind. And we get really good at that, right? I think everybody does. But as we move throughout the class today, and we're going to be moving slowly and holding poses for a while, I'll help you to keep peeling back layers of that understanding in a variety of different ways. Not to take you backwards or to fall into victim mode, but again, to more of a sense move into victor mode with that understanding of how we can untangle that which we sometimes feel confined by or wound up and dictated by. Some of you are going to stay in this side a little bit longer. You're more than welcome to. In fact, even when I cue you out of a pose, I only want you to move when you feel ready to move. So if you wanted to stay here for 5 minutes, you go ahead and do that. If you're ready to change sides, you come back to the center and you scoop your hips over to the center again, because obviously they're a little off center. And then you switch sides, left shin over and across the thigh. So you scoot your hips just a little bit to the left first, and then drop your legs to the other side. So now either looking up at the ceiling or looking over to the left. Notice the difference between forcing your head into the position, right? Like forcing to look over to the left, even though there might be some strain there, versus aligning with your body and settling into the position that feels most supportive. So there's a big difference between force versus power. Another word for power could be love. And so notice when you're forcing yourself how unloving you become, or can become. Let your eyes close, or at least soften them. And the great thing about restorative is that we do hold these poses. So movement is just an excuse not to feel something, right? If you're always needing to fidget and needing to move, it's because you're settling into the present moment. And in that present moment, what happens is that your body releases what it has to hold for you while you're operating on unawareness most of the time. And so you're coming into communion with that feeling. So you either have the reaction to continue relaxing your body into that feeling, because it's your way of telling your body you're going to hold that energy so that it can actually repair, or you're going to continue moving, continue fidgeting, and activating that unawareness, so presence is now collapsed, so your body doesn't heal, because you're not getting out of the way for it. You're not being of assistance to your body. Your body is the memory stick to your mind. It's holding everything that you don't want to deal with all of the time. That's exhausting. That's a lot to carry. So the more that you feel in and let go into surrendering into feeling, the more pressure you take off of your body, and that's the only way you heal during any yoga pose ever. If you just wait for the pose to be over, you just activate more lifeless energy for your body to hold. And a lot of people don't understand that doing yoga doesn't make you present. Like, these poses don't make you present. You have to activate presence during it, which again is the only way the medicine can be activated during it. So you get to determine, are you just waiting for your life to be over, / waiting for the pose to be over? Or are you really allowing yourself to drop into everything that's coming up, even if you're at the height of ignorance, which is what boredom is? Watch the mind, because it can sometimes trick you into thinking things or come up with excuses and justifications, right? When you're not looking, in other words, when you're not being present, when you're just being operated by autopilot. Okay, we're going to come back through to the center. Good. And from here, you're going to go ahead and you're going to roll over. It doesn't matter to which side to come up to a seated position. Good. And we're going to come into lizard. So I want you to come onto all fours and step your right foot to the outer edge of your mat. You can turn your toes out a little. So this is a bit more active, which restorative can be. Okay, so you can either stay up on your hands, or you can put a block, or maybe 2 blocks, right? You could stack blocks, and then bring your elbows down onto the blocks, and maybe rest your forehead into your hands. Okay, some of you will be able to drop all the way down onto the mat. And then what I like to do is I'll take the other block and I'll actually put it on a little bit of a slant, whether it's on the really high setting. So I'm pretty flexible. I'm going to drop it down to the second setting. And I tend to put it on a bit of a slant like that. So it's not standing straight like that. It's on a little bit of a slant, kind of like a kickstand. And I just prop it underneath of the thigh so that it, instead of me having to kind of hold up the left thigh, right, with the muscular activation, I can let go on it. Now, I don't want to completely collapse on it, but it's there to take some mental pressure out of the equation because I'm not having to activate those certain muscles there, right, to a certain degree. And the back toes actually stay tucked under. So the knee is down on the mat, but the toes are tucked. And the reason for that is because that's Padabandha. That's the arch lock that's designed to stabilize the joints. For some reason, facilitators have been bypassing that for years. It's really important to have the joint support, to have the arch lock in place, because it gives you a proportionate stretch. It increases the volume, you could say, in between the joints when they're stable. That's that proportionate widening effect of circulation that comes into play. But when you untuck the toes, like for example in this one, notice how your knee kind of goes jelly? That's not good. And we've lost that activation of the proportionate stretch into the belly of each muscle group in between the joints now. right? So when the big toe is tucked under, or the toes are tucked under rather, and you're pressing back just a tiny bit more through that left big toe, it prevents the ankle from flopping one side to the other. And then the ankle is now stable. So you might not notice it, and it's really, really subtle. But when the foot is proportionate like that, and it's in that arch lock, it really lightly hugs the inner and outer edge of the ankle in, which stabilizes the ankle joint to knee joint to hip joint. And then again, comes in that proportionate stretch in between the joints. And we want to soften efforting that doesn't need to be there. So for example, your face does not need to feel like is it ready to pop, right? So if you soften your eyes, for example, notice how the rest of the face tends to soften with it. And you want to continue doing that because our brilliant minds move so fast that as soon as you soften them, we kind of tend to act like goldfish and forget every 3 seconds, and then the mind picks back up and it's on the move. So I'll usually blink my eyes multiple times in a pose as a way to snap myself out of being on the trajectory of moving to the next pose, so I can remain present so that the body has the ability to heal while I'm here. Because remember, the mind has to be present. Another way to say that is the mind needs to be grounded. Okay, we're going to switch sides, but only if you're ready. I'm sure all of you are. So just slowly back out of it, sliding the right foot back so that you're on all fours. And then step your left foot forward. Sometimes one side feels a little tighter than the other, maybe a lot. Don't overthink it. In fact, do your best not to get into your head about anything. Because, see, when we go into overthinking things, thinking in general, it ungrounds us. So thinking, the way that I see it, almost like a cartoon, there's all of a sudden this little bubble above our head, that cartoon bubble of thought. Well, we energetically leave the body in a way. Okay, so now mine's in the thinking cap that I sometimes call Fantasy Island. In my book, I called it reality because it's so close to reality. But it is a fantasy state. And usually people are captivated by that bubble and they're not actually present where they are. They might be at work right now in their head, at home right now, at the grocery store, for example, right? So that's astral movement. That's how the mind ejects from the present physical moment and leaves. So when we do that, the body goes into survival. So that's why your body's having to hold all of the information and it becomes taxing, is because you're operating away from this present moment. So I want you to use your body as a way to pop that bubble above your head and get grounded into the physical reality, because again, once you're grounded, there's a state of presence and an understanding, even if you're not coherent of it, of the mind saying to the body, I'm coming in to feel all of this, which is what present is, so that I can hold it. So I'm basically getting out of your way so that you can do what you naturally do best, which is to repair and function optimally. So if you think about it, the only way and reason our bodies age, and sometimes rapidly and poorly, is because we're captivated by that bubble all the time. We're not really grounded, right? So when the more we're ungrounded, the more unwell we become, because every time you leave, your body's surviving you. So think of it this way too. We don't even have to be in a state of major stress when that's happening. This is not to say, of course, that we need to be present all the time. This is our recharge, this is our reset, not just for our physical bodies getting a break from us, but this is to create mental flexibility, which gives you mental peace at the end of the day, because you're forcing your mind to be here, to be present. So you're actually creating more mental flexibility than you are physical flexibility initially. In other words, the mind's going to do it quicker because it moves at light speed, but sometimes it'll take the body days, weeks, months, even years to catch up to that flexibility. The question's going to be, are you going to allow yourself to keep sinking into the journey, or are you going to try to drag the body back behind you and say, well, I'm never going to get flexible, nothing's happening. Notice how tight and rigid your thinking is when you do that. And then remember, your body has to hold that too. Okay, let's come to all fours. So let's move through cat-cow correctly. Okay, so we're on all fours. And in cat-cow, when you look up to the ceiling, your toes are actually tucked under. Now, the toes are tucked, and you press the knees. This is really, really subtle, by the way. So the knees start to press down and pull the mat apart a little bit when you look up at the ceiling. And notice as the knees push down and pull apart, your inner groins are pulling apart, so it is opening into the hips. Now, softly relax your shoulders back instead of pulling them back, and keep softening the spine and create zombie eyes. So look up, right? That's your inhale. And then on the exhale, you untuck the toes. When you drop your head and look back behind you, I want you to visualize that the spine is being sucked up to the ceiling so that you're not pushing into your palms, creating compression, but rather you're pulling away from them, which creates the circulation. And then you inhale, tuck under the toes, the spine softens, shoulders relax back, eyes up, knees down and apart. And then we untuck the toes and the spine sucks up to the ceiling. And then you move through that at your own pace, and just do that with the rhythm of your breath. And some of you might go really, really, really slow, and some of you might go super fast. It honestly is completely up to you, which is just the same as all of the poses that we're coming into. Like, you don't have to hold them as long as I'm cueing it. You can get out of the pose at any time. So regardless of what I'm saying during the poses, right? Like when I say, okay, we'll try not to move because we don't want to disrupt any of the energy moving. If you need to move, you know your body better than I do. You move and get out of it no matter what. Okay, and then we're just going to come to a standstill with this now. Okay, now from here, I want you to go ahead and step your right foot forward between the hands. We're going to come into a wide-legged fold. Okay, so we're going to lift the back knee up. We're going to turn in to face the long edge of the mat. We don't want our heads in somebody's butt, so we got to tuck the head in a little, because some of you are really close to each other. And then you're going to fold into whatever kind of fold you want. Now, you could fold, and if your hands aren't touching the mat, you could bring your hands onto blocks. Some of you might stretch your hands forward if you have the room, so your arms are really long. Right? You could grab the elbows. So there's nothing that's you can't do so long as it feels supportive. And we're not going to hold this for 5 minutes, right? But we're going to sink into it a little bit. It is a really, really great way to open up the inner groins, hamstrings, hips. Let your eyes go back between your legs and take your drishti point, which just means the point of gaze. So where you're looking is a drishti point. You keep your gaze in that position, which every time we do a forward fold and it's between the legs, is about halfway up the bridge of your nose towards the tip of it. And then you keep your eyes in that one position, so crawling up the candle wall. For those of you way back here, your gaze is obviously going to go probably right up to the ceiling. You'll be able to see it. But you got to keep your eyes relaxed. So think about it this way. And I have a very unique language of how I'm speaking things. So, take what resonates, leave the rest behind. But if back behind the eyes is the optic nerves, okay, if you start imagining to soften behind the eyes, because imagination is the conduit to all physical reality, we soften back behind the eyes, we automatically would begin softening in to the nervous system. There's those optic nerves, which are a part of the central nervous system, which is why the eyes are not separate from the brain, they're a part of it. So as you soften your eyes and hold that point, that drishti point, you're anchoring your mind to your body to be in a present state, but also we could even stretch the mind to say possibly a parasympathetic state. And this is because you're resting and digesting into the moment rather than trying to fight it and flee it. So as you soften your eyes, you're popping that bubble, you're becoming grounded, you're no longer fighting and trying to get out. Keep softening different parts of the body to land and thus expand and activate the light within the pose. One more breath. If you're ready, we'll place the hands down. We'll turn to the front of the room, and we're going to set the back knee down. We're going to come into pigeon. You're going to wiggle your right foot all the way over to the left. And if you don't want to do pigeon, you can do any hip opener. So some of you might lie on your back. If you don't want to do pigeon, you take your right shin across your left thigh, like we did at the beginning, except for you would hug your thighs in. Okay? Now, we don't want to be holding a pose and be in pain unless you understand the conduit of enthusiasm during the scale of emotions, which most of us don't. So if you get into the position and there's pain there and you're holding it, you're going to be in a mental inflammatory state, which is a state of resistance. This hurts. How long do I have to hold this? That's an inflammatory thinking. And remember, since the body is the memory stick to the mind, it simultaneously becomes physical inflammation. So remember, the pose doesn't heal you, so now you're in the pose depreciating. So I'm here to remind you how to activate medicine in the pose so that you don't fall asleep under the hypnosis that the pose heals you. So that you remain aware, again, not just for the physical attributes of physical flexibility and physical strength, but for the mental flexibility and mental strength. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want first, isn't it? To feel mentally well. And then, like I said, eventually the body will begin aligning to this. But remember, it could take a really long time because the body cannot go to work as fast as I can tell you to go there in your head right now. Right? Mind is like scalar moves. It's fast and light speed. So we want to remember to always give our bodies time, because they are on time, to open and release when they're ready. So you feel sometimes the different layers that every pose will have to offer, like layers of an onion. And as you get into sometimes what feels a little prickly, this is where you're going to use your breathing as a tool to help you sink into and then through those different layers. So for example, when it starts to feel really jagged, you just take a deep breath in. You don't push your exhale out because there's resistance. Just inhale and then exhale, let it go. It's that in, right? That's the take. And then releasing the exhale is the receiving. That's the merging, connecting, alchemization process that the breath can offer. It's not the dramatic breathing that sets us up to believe that life is hard, right? If you're doing Ujjayi breath, I wouldn't even hear you do it because that wind tunnel in the throat is so quietly, but it's just a pity that we've made it sound like it's supposed to be dramatic. And all that does is signify my life is hard. Breathing is hard work. No, it isn't. So the more you relax into your body, the more your body's going to function optimally, and you're just simply going to breathe normally, and you don't have to think about always doing breath exercises to try to breathe away the pain that you're feeling. Notice how it can be a distraction. Just like some of you might have came to yoga today because you're using it as a distraction to avoid something in your life. And then in doing that, because you can't lie to your body records that lie. And then it holds the suppression you're trying to run from. So every time you get on your mat, it is of the utmost importance to allow yourself to drop into the feeling, all feelings, sensations that are coming up, because it's that connection with the totality of everything that's rising, remember, that offers you solace and peace. Now some of you are going to stay here longer, some of you are going to switch sides. So again, we're not doing 5-minute holds side to side, just a couple minutes, kind of prepping the hip for maybe another visit with this later, who knows. You go into pigeon on the other side whenever you're ready, you get there however you want. You know, it's funny, we can do any shape at any time, advanced or not, so long as we're willing to be where our feet are. So in other words, a lot of people will think, well, I can't get into this pose right now because I'm not warmed up. Well, then you're obviously comparing it to another time in a class that you did this, which means you're lacking presence now, which means you can't activate any medicine in the pose. So can you let yourself make the shape of pigeon now? Not the other time zone, that's Fantasy Island. I'm talking about the only present moment that exists, which is right now. So this pigeon could look dramatically different than the pigeons you've done previous to this. The question is, are you going to align to this time zone, to this particular pigeon shape, or are you going to remain attached to where you've been? Because if you remain attached with that comparison, see how it covers up your ability to see the present now? So then the present is no longer here. The past is overriding your view, which again doesn't allow light to be refracted from the pose. Light doesn't come in from outer space. It comes from the cells, the ATP within you, but it has to be born through presence. I believe that because the body is the memory stick to the mind, right? It's when we continue activating lifeless energy that it negatively impacts the mitochondria, right? Little power plants in the cells, the ATP. So if we want our cells to be lit, the mind has to come into a state of presence. But because we're so used to vibrating on the images that thinking cap above the body, above ground, offers, and we sometimes make that way more real than what's actually going on in the moment, we dim our lights. For example, do you notice how if you're really stressed out about something, like let's say you had a breakup with somebody, okay, and you're in the room and that's all you're thinking about. So you're not aware of what's going on in the room, you're just aware of that image. And now that image is completely polluting your inner landscape and ability to heal. And it's not even real. And you'll say to yourself, yeah, it is. I broke up with him. He dumped me today. Well, not right now in this moment. See how you're energizing that image to cover up the present? So continue recognizing that so that you recognize how you're your own problem everywhere you go. You're the only one that destroys your ability to feel free in any moment. It doesn't matter what anybody says, doesn't matter what the temperature in the room is, doesn't matter what the music is. You get to decide what you want to cast your net, your perception net, over top of that with and make yourself feel uncomfortable. So I want you to become really aware of what's happening right now according to this moment. And right now you're in a yoga pose that is giving you the opportunity to heal. So the yoga poses don't heal you, but they give you the opportunity. So this pose right now is like wringing out a towel. You get into this pose because it's giving you the ability to conjure what your body's having to hold for you, to bring it up to the surface. And then you get to determine whether or not you're going to relax into that and let go into that and feed light into that, or just wait for it to be over and compound the energy. And some of you are going to stay here a little bit longer. Some of you are going to go back maybe to downward dog for a moment. If you don't want to do downward dog, you can just come to all fours and move through cat-cow a couple times, but some of you will feel really good going back to down dog. If you go back to downward dog, visualize that you have an extra pair of your own hands on your hips, and those hands are pulling your hips backwards through the door, because then you pull away from the wrists, and that's what makes them stronger. If you push forward, obviously it's compressive. And then we're going to come into another wide-legged fold. We'll step the left foot forward, and you're going to turn to the long edge of your mat. And again, you could choose any fold you want. It could be your arms stretching out ahead of you. Maybe you grab your big toes or the outside edges of your feet and fold. And if the fold doesn't resonate with you, remember, it's your practice. You can do whatever you want. You can lie back down on your back and take your shin across your thigh and thread the needle or whatever. Stand on your head. I don't care. Right? You're aligning to what feels most supportive. So everything that every facilitator is cueing is a suggestion. It's just like everything in life. Even though when we're in victim mode, we want to put the responsibility of how we feel on other people and say, oh, no, they told me to do that. Interesting, again, how the mind, when it's operative in victim mode, will always look to seek justifications to stay in that low vibration and nothing changes. But due to the laws of mathematics and physics, which are vibration and the building blocks of emotions that are emitted from each one of our fields that affect the quantum field, I believe that there's no coincidence we're all here together today, and that we're meant to pour in and out of one another through the state of presence so that we can sometimes hear ourselves speak, in other words, through one another. And that can either bring salvation or it can bring a trigger point, right? Somebody says something you don't like. You have the opportunity to realize in that moment that you can self-reflect over what's being triggered because it came up on purpose for you because you're ready to heal it. So you go into the feeling rather than stay captivated by the story, and then you allow yourself to surrender into the story and you become your own alchemizer and shift that toxic energy into a harmonious one. Or, like I said, you just stay stuck there and continue pulling the trigger on being triggered. Again, that's victim mode, defense mode, attack mode. Okay, we're going to go ahead, turn to face the front of the room. And then we're going to come through to a seated position. So however you'd like to do that. Let's straighten out the legs. So we're going to come into a twist. So leave your left leg straight. This is Ardha Matsyendrasana. You're going to bend your right leg. You're going to step your right foot over and across your left thigh. And then you're going to wrap your left arm around your shin. And then you're going to take your right hand back behind you. Now, if you take your right hand back behind you and you're really leaning into it, then unwind yourself back to the mirror. Take both hands around your shin and pull yourself in really tight towards it and sit up really tall using the shin. And then hold your right hand in place while you then reach forward. Rewrap the left arm around the shin. So spine is super tall, then right hand back. Those of you super bendies, if you wanted to bend your left leg in, so the left heel would come towards your butt, you could do that version. Just make sure that you are actually physically prepared to be in that position and that you're not captivated by that fantasy island bubble that says, I'm seeing myself somewhere I'm not physically ready to be yet. And then you're holding misalignment, which just causes an injury. And so we take our gaze to the candle wall. So we're not forcing, remember, but we do start stretching the eyes to the right-hand side edge of the room, and think about leading with the left eye first versus the right eye. So as your eyes are shifting, it's shifting from the left eye to the right. That might start to turn your head a little bit more to the right, maybe even looking back past the right shoulder. But again, you're really aware of how that feels. And we keep the spine tall, right? In restorative, we're maintaining these positions that don't let us go to sleep. So they are definitely calling for some muscular efforting. But if we activate too much muscle, like if we pull the shoulders up, for example, and we don't keep them relaxed, if we don't lift the front of the heart, which is the muscular efforting, and keep the back of the heart relaxed, so those two opposing energies are coming into play, and we pull the shoulders up and activate the traps, the contraction goes right to your head, and then you do feel like a zit ready to pop again. So all you're going to do is have inflamed thoughts. How long do I have to hold this pose? This is too hard. So again, watch how you can make time crunch you, because you're making time, nobody makes that for you. Or you can make time a relaxed state of being, right? Activate the muscles and then find relaxation in others so that you don't just buy yourself time. Again, you realize you're making it. Okay, and then let's go ahead and we're going to unwind and we'll do the other side. So straighten into the right leg, pick up your left foot, step it over and across the thigh. And then the left hand goes back behind you. So again, you decide if you can bend that bottom leg in, you just go ahead and go for it. And if there's at any stage of the way in these poses that you want to add on something else, make sure that you go ahead and do it, right? Don't ever wait for my cue. And then again, if it doesn't feel supportive, move into a pose that does. So we're shifting eyes to the left softly. Remember, we don't want buggy eyes. So you think about buggy eyes are pushing forward. So it's very obvious. It's because the mind is trying to push forward against this moment. It's waiting for it to be over again. Right? Notice when you're stressed, eyes are bugging, staring at your screen all day. At school, concentrating, whatever, buggy eyes. Trying to get through it again. A lot of struggle going on there, lack of presence. Problem is the body goes into more of an anaerobic state of being where it's lacking oxygen because, again, we're fixated, sort of choking ourselves to death on trying to get ahead. Right? Notice when you're stressed out, you're not really breathing properly because you're choking on the story of it. So we keep softening the eyes, remember, as a way to pop that bubble, which again allows the mind to be grounded, and when we're grounded, the body functions optimally, hence how we activate medicine. Not just in this pose, you could sit at your desk and do it, you could be lying on your couch and do it. You can make any shape you want and activate light. And then we're going to go ahead and unwind. So we're going to move into double pigeon or Gomukhasana. So you're going to straighten out the left leg and then take your right shin across your thigh. So the ankle's above the knee, obviously. You don't want it on the knee. And then some of you are going to stay here. You're going to be in the half version of this. So the hands are going to come back. You're going to push the mat to the door and press your chest in opposition. So chest pushes forward. And then those of you that are a little more flexible, you're going to bend the bottom leg in and do the full pose. So the feet, though, are right in alignment with the knees. So the bottom foot in this one is not pulled to the inner thigh or to the groin or to the hip. It's right below the knee. So the knee might be up really high if the hip's tight, so you would just stay here. But if you're really flexible in the hips and your knees low, maybe you put a block down, rest your forehead into your hands. Maybe you come all the way down. Again, your body's going to show you the present moment. And then you get to argue with it or not. It's like everything and anything. Right? Like we take ourselves with us wherever we go is the saying. So just because we're doing yoga, remember, we can put on a false cap if we want and pretend to be somebody else, but that's not going to get you far. Make sure your feet stay really active. So push through the big toe a little so the ankle bone stays strong. And if this feels like it's too much, you can go into Gomukhasana. You could pull the bottom foot in, and then you take the top foot over. And a lot of people like to lean forward like this because it kind of manipulates the pose a bit to get the knees to somewhat stack. And then you bring your butt back down, and then you either sit up tall again or you fold. Right? And that could be with a block again or without one. Right? And then remember, don't fight the pose, let go into it. Keep letting go. Remember, your mind's got to use its body, its physical counterpart, to relax itself so you feel that physically. So mind is going to soften the eyes. Mind is going to soften the shoulders. Unwind, unwind, unwind it goes. It's funny, stories will keep you really fired up here. The problem with this is because when we eject, again, this is from my perspective, because now the body is surviving, it activates a more sympathetic state. So when we're up here, we're in a more reptilian state, okay, of the brain. We've just disconnected from prefrontal cortex, empathy. So we're operating more in this, I want to fight, and try to energize more drama, versus allowing ourselves to fully feel. That would be softening our eyes, softening our shoulders, allow ourselves to feel the rage if that's what's there. So then the story begins to pop, you get back into your body. Now you're merging with that energy, because rage, frustration, same thing, just different degree, is a phenomenal energy to move energy really quickly. But people actually create more inflammation in the body because they stay up here. They don't allow themselves to feel it. They don't relax into the rage, just soften into it and let it happen. They just stay fired up over the story. So the body just continues to become inflamed. Okay, we're going to come up and we're going to switch sides. So now we're going to straighten out the right leg. We'll take the left shin across the thigh. And then it's the same thing. You get to decide, right, whether that right leg stays straight, whether you fold it in for double pigeon, or you're moving into Gomukhasana maybe. And then the same thing, you either sit up tall or fold. One side you could be doing one thing and the other side the other. It doesn't have to be the exact same side to side, in other words. Notice how even that, because we can have that sort of mental disorder where we're like, it has to be the same this side, how powerless that makes you feel. Align to what feels most supportive, not what you think you have to do, but what feels most supportive. That can be really challenging for a while because we really do think our feelings are up here. We actually contribute how we feel to this all the time. But it doesn't allow us to sink into the reality of what they are. And then the story dissolves. It's basically what forgiveness is. When you come into communion with the actual feeling of that and really start feeling it, and sometimes allow yourself to cry or scream or yell or whatever you're doing in the privacy of your home with it, when you really allow yourself to come into feeling, because you're in your body, you alchemize that energy, and now the story isn't dictating you, which is the forgiveness, which is why all of a sudden you don't feel conflicted by that person, place, or what they said or what they did, because you're here. Right? Every time something happens out there, again, it's the byproduct of the mathematics. The vibration that's being emitted from your electromagnetic field, it's the construct of the physics of the emotion, the building blocks of it that go out and tune the quantum reality to arrange people, places, and situations for you to now pull that out of them for you to be triggered so you can heal. But again, if you don't see it, you'll remain captive, pull the trigger on being triggered, everything stays the same, nothing changes. No space is created, no light. Going to repeat the same patterns in every single one of your relationships. Body won't change, nothing's changing. Just that victim reel is going to stay, you're going to stay stuck on it. Okay, you're either going to stay here or you're going to come out of it. We're going to use the blocks. So we're going to put the first block down on the second setting like this, right? There's the first setting, second setting, third setting. So go first or second. This is going to run the length of the spine. So you just put it back behind you. Now, the other block, I usually put mine on the high setting underneath my head, but you could go to the second. I wouldn't go down to the first, like do the second or the third, but put that one right beside you first. So the way that I get into it, that first block going up the spine, it's nowhere near your low back, okay? But it's not coming up to the neck either. You want the top of it to run at basically the top of the shoulders and then midway down the back. But it doesn't have to be exact, and you can move this. So I usually reach back with my hands and I'll pull it in a bit, right? So maybe a couple fist distance away from the tailbone, and I'll hold it so I can lay down on it. And as I'm laying down, and I grab the other block, and then I put it under my head, and then I kind of adjust that with both hands after that. And then if it doesn't feel right, then you wiggle around a little, maybe need to sit up and fix some things again, and then lay back down. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And right, and as facilitators today, we usually don't come over and adjust anybody after COVID. A lot of sensitivity began happening during that time. So if you ever want an adjustment from any facilitator, you'll put your hand up, give us a wave, and then we'll come and adjust you. Other than that, we're going to allow you to experience where you're at. In fact, a lot of times adjustments could come in and possibly infringe on where somebody is at. Right? Like I could look at you and go, well, that looks out of alignment, but yet you feel really good there. Like you're having a moment, and then if I come over and say, no, you're doing it wrong, but you know you're in a good place, and then you do what I do and it doesn't feel supportive, then see how you just suppressed your own instinct and wisdom there? So that's why, again, I rarely did adjustments even prior to that. I'll talk about alignment. I'll give you my reasons for alignment and why I think they're important, but at the end of the day, you're checking in with your own facilitator, which is internal. Cross-reference what you need to, but also remain open, because notice how sometimes you can come into a room and all you want to do is argue with what the person is saying. Notice again in that moment how you're being your own problem, how nothing's changing, and see how you do that everywhere? Again, you got to sift through the murkiness of the mind, of the programs that you're habitually running or that you started running that are now operating you. Meaning, notice how somebody can say something and you get triggered, and then you go into every single excuse to justify crucifying them or why you're right and they're wrong. If that happens, if that rears its ugly head, that programming rears its ugly head, that is a moment in time where you have the opportunity to reveal something that's actually really stuck and inflamed. So we don't have to agree with what everybody says, but the justification of something or the rise up of anger explains there's inflammation there. So it's always something to look at. It always just starts with one willingness of something to look at yourself, for that program to become a little malleable. And then once you start revealing that, you really can start working into self-reflection in all areas of your life instead of deflection in all of them. And then that's when you go, oh, that's what she meant about me being my own problem. I'm my own solution. Hence, moving from victim to victor, from attack to harmony. But until that, right, we're always going to hold everybody else responsible for how we feel. We'll never understand, or even if we can intellectually understand, we won't innately know the principles of how emotional vibration tunes the frequency of the outer world and is always presenting us opportunities to stay stuck and be in a hell-like mind state, or a heavenly one for lack of better wording. And some of you are going to stay here. So remember, you only move when you're ready to move. And those of you that are ready to move, you're going to take your time to roll onto your side. And we'll just rest there. It doesn't matter if it's the right or the left. Like if you have the room, you could roll either way. The reason that we just roll to the right is because when it's a full class, we all roll the same way and we don't roll into each other. So if you're really close to somebody, you might move to the right. And then what we'll do is we'll actually lie flat on the mat. So if you're on the blocks and you want to stay there, because we're going to chant to close. So to take us into Shavasana, we'll do some chanting, not for airy-fairy reasons, not for any religious Hindu reasons, which is the yoga practice, but rather to create space in the body. So we're making some sounds that aren't words per se, and that's going to allow that state of expansion to come into the body. So even though I'm cueing the sound to make, be very cognizant, this is your sound, and your sound has resonance and ability to create space and harmony in the cells, right? We usually fill up words with weapons. That's why if somebody says the word God, they go right into the sympathetic nervous system, fly right out of here, like a cat on a tin roof. Or if somebody says creator and they don't say God, just notice when you get conflicted by a word, I want you to pay attention to how much rain that word has on you and how much you've infected that word. So important to work through things that are in control of us, that make us hot, right? Or they just continue to stay buried and inflamed in us. Okay, so the sound that we're going to make is two sounds. It's oh, ah. It goes oh, ah. So we're just going to do a few of those, and then we're going to take it into om.